Rick Morris. I'm bringing you step 23. This is episode 4, titled Access to God's Ways. You know, God's ways are higher than our ways. And access to his ways is a very interesting topic. Let me give you a couple of examples that I ran into just today. I was working with a carpenter, and he was sharing with me how he came to Christ. I really don't even know how we got on the subject, but he was telling me that he had a piece of property and a partner, and they were selling the property. And um, this man was meeting him to have a meeting to talk about it halfway, and it happened to be at this man's church, which is in on the west side of Austin, big mega church. Well, they met and went to church together, and then they had lunch and talked over the business deal. And another week went by, and so they needed to talk again and made arrangements to do the same thing: meet at this same church, go to the service, and then have a business meeting at lunch after the service. Well, the third week, the business deal still had some decisions to be made, and my friend told me the guy didn't show up, but he decided to just go to church anyway. And he said during the sermon, uh, God touched his heart, and he found himself walking down the aisle during the altar call, and he gave his heart to Jesus Christ. And it all happened because God's ways are higher than our ways. This man didn't invite him to church to give his heart over to Christ. He invited him to church so that they could go have a business meeting. Well, I told him, I said, my story is similar. I moved to Dallas in 1982, and I had given my heart to God, but I had walked a long way away from serving Him, and I was new to the Dallas area. And I told my wife, I said, you know what, we need to get back in church. Our daughter is very young, and she agreed with me. And it was when I was becoming sober. And so this was all in the whole scheme of things. God's ways are higher than our ways. Anyway, we went out, we got dressed and went on a Sunday morning, and the first church we came to was a little Baptist church that was on fire for God, had a wonderful preacher, and so we loved it, and we attended every time their doors were open for 3 weeks. And then the pastor came to me, and you're not going to believe this, but he told me, um, "You've been coming regular. I can tell your heart's good. Would you teach the junior high boys in Sunday school?" And I said, "Sure, I'll do it." Well, I that was a challenge for my wife and I. We had to study the word. We had to study the lesson, and we actually learned more than the kids learned. I remember one of the kids was in Christian school. He knew the Bible better than I did, and I would make some statements, and I'd look over at William, and I'd say, "William, does that sound right?" And he said, "Well, points 1, 2, and 3 were right on," but he said, "On your fourth point, you really probably ought to modify it and say it this way." Anyway, we learned with the junior high boys more about God in that next year teaching that class than we ever would have just on our own. So God's ways are higher than our ways. It's amazing what He does, how He does it. Well, this is going to be step 4 or episode 4 of step 23. It's titled "Access to God's Ways." How do I get to God's ways instead of my ways? The step states, we realize God's ways are higher than our ways. And I picked out this verse. What no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who loved him, who love him. 1 Corinthians 2:9. Now, many people think that verse is for heaven, for when we get to heaven. No, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who love him. But that verse is for now. Whenever you love God, he is preparing things for you. So you might say, I've lived life my way. I've made a mess out of it. I've tried hard to change my life so I could enjoy work and family. But you know what? I make mistakes that they ruin my intent. I want to live God's way, not my way. I'm convinced that's the best way. How do I do that? I'll pause, let you think about it, and then I'll give you my answer. Start slow. Take one thing at a time. We can't change everything at once. Set a time every day to read his word. God's written word feeds our spirit. We must have food for our body in order for it to be healthy. We also need food for our spirit, for it to be healthy. Reading the word feeds the spirit. Make that a habit. You know, you have to do something for 30 days before it becomes a habit. Read a verse or a chapter when you go to bed or when you wake up. Some people are sharpest when they first wake up. Some people like to do things right before they go to bed. I would recommend you start in the book of John. Make it a routine, just like eating a meal or brushing your teeth. A time will come when the words in the Bible will come alive to you. Just trust me on that one. You get into a habit of reading the word every day, and eventually the words will jump off the page because they're living. It sounds impossible, but it's true. The words are living. Also want to say, our mind is a battleground. The war of good over evil is fought in our mind, right up here. When our mind gets an evil thought, take it captive. Put it to death. Crucify it. Refuse to think that way. You even can declare out loud, I refuse to think that way. Then immediately think good thoughts. Here's a verse for you that backs that up. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there be any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. That was what Paul wrote to the Philippians, chapter 4, verse 8. It's a wonderful verse about how to think positive, good, honorable, true, just thoughts. Love God. You'll be amazed at what he has prepared for you. And he's prepared for now. It doesn't start when you get to heaven. It starts the minute you love him. Okay, you might say, how do I do that? What does that look like? We noted previously that we establish a habit of reading the Bible, which makes our spirit strong and healthy. As we develop this habit of reading the Word, we take control of our thoughts. Start by refusing to think about anything that is evil. You're going to be shocked when you really analyze it, how many thoughts come into your mind that are evil. Reading the Word and changing our thoughts will change everything. Things that could break either against us or break our way, they start breaking our way. It's amazing and it's supernatural. That's what happened to me. The media is dominated by evil. We've been puzzled by why more true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable movies with excellence and that are worthy of praise haven't been filmed. When they are filmed, they usually turn into blockbusters. For example, Lion King, Titanic, Hugo, It's a Wonderful Life. That's just an example of a few. Why doesn't Hollywood figure that out? I'll pause and let you think about it, talk about it. It's because the movie moguls are influenced by the evil one. The evil one has influence over them. They make horror movies, movies that glorify drugs, gangs, robberies, wars, car crashes, destruction. They wouldn't make those movies if nobody went to them to see them. Satan uses the media as a drumbeat of evil and temptation. Same thing with television and the internet. Any kind of media. Through his influence, he glorifies drugs, gangs, robbery, magic, death, murder, and a multitude of other evils. So you might say, Rick, it sounds too good to be true. We make a habit of reading the Bible and changing our thoughts from evil to good, and we'll have access to God's ways? Yes. It's the beginning of reaching the purpose and destiny that God has for his children. As we read his word and we think good thoughts, then we pray, and when we pray, we establish a relationship with him. It's that simple. Suddenly, our world starts turning around. So you might say, will all my problems go away? No. There will always be challenges in this life that we face. The word actually confirms that. But the difference in living God's way instead of our way is that God will be with us every step of the way. It's like a child who holds his father's hand when crossing a busy street. If the child is rebellious and breaks away and runs out into the middle of the street, he's in danger. But if he holds tightly to his father's hand, he will get safely to the other side. When we get into God's will, we start entering into his ways instead of our ways. We're holding on to his hand tightly, and we cross the intersection, the busy intersections of life, safely. You think about this one, and we'll go on to the next episode.